been doing that segment each and every Football Friday on WFNZ with Mac and Bone for, I don't know, the last 5 years. And it seems as if usually by October, the Carolina Panthers are eliminated. And when they started the year out 0-2, I'm like, uh-oh, this is going to be another dreadful Football Friday, even though I love talking to Mac and Bone. But it could get negative when the team just keeps on losing and losing. I know yesterday didn't go the way that they wanted it to, and it was a golden opportunity. So I'll just ask you this. If you were in that locker room, if you were a leader, you still have to play Tampa Bay twice. The division's right there. Even though yesterday they gagged one away, what would your message be today?
I think that's the biggest thing is that, guys, listen, we had an opportunity. We came on the road coming off of a bye week. But, man, we didn't give ourselves the best chance to win. We're averaging 5 penalties a game. We had 11 yesterday. We gave the Saints opportunities, and give the Saints credit. They're playing pretty good football. Tyler Shuck, I've got to give him credit. This kid can throw the football. And the way Kellen Moore, that defense, they're progressing as the season's going on. But everything's still right in front of us. We have Tampa 2 out of our next 3 games. We go home for 2 games in a row. This is what we have to do. We put ourselves in a bind yesterday, but we got to answer. And you could see walking off the field yesterday. I always kind of watch the players walk off the field. It was you could tell it was disappointment, and you can listen in many of the post-game pressers that, hey, it's our fault. We didn't get it done. We got to answer. Our back's against the wall. But that's the part of the process of growing up. Listen, I think if you would have told me before the season, 3 games left, we have 7 wins on the season, I would have been like, okay, we're making progress. Now, the way it's all played out so far, we might have left a win out yesterday where we had a 10-point lead in the third quarter. We just couldn't close it. That was disappointing. But how do we answer? And this team has answered. I will say that this team has come back from some crushing defeats this year so far.
What is Bryce Young as a quarterback in your estimation?
You know what? That's a great question. We've seen some flashes, right? There's some question marks about him. Like, we're not throwing for over 200 yards at all. We did it in Arizona, but we threw the ball like 55 times because we were down so much. But a couple of the wins, he had 199 and 198. So I think you got to be careful when you look at statistics like that. But then you go in Atlanta, we throw for 448 yards. And then the Monday night game in San Fran, we struggled offensively. All of us did. It wasn't just him, but I mean all of us. It wasn't just him. Then you come back and you play the Rams, who, in my opinion, the best team I've seen on film, at least from what I would see. And we played really good football. And Bryce was 15 for 20 for 3 touchdowns. So I see some good football in him. I just think we're so young at the wide receiver position. And I know Bryce is in year 3. But he's had so much playing time, and he's had so much, I don't want to say bad play around him, and he's had some struggles that he's really taken a big jump. And I think some of these young receivers, it's getting on the same page with a lot of those guys, because Adam Thielen is no longer there, who was Bryce's security blanket. David Moore was a veteran who Bryce went to last year in the clutch many times. He's been hurt since, I think, our 4th game of the season. So I think it's just steady growing. And yesterday was one of those days we just couldn't get it done. And I really don't think it was too much what Bryce was doing. We just weren't good enough in all our phases yesterday.
Talking to Jake Delhomme right now. The Chiefs were eliminated from the playoffs yesterday. Obviously, Patrick Mahomes also tore his ACL. When you saw that, how did you just react to it?
Yeah, it makes my heart hurt. I don't know Patrick personally, but just I'm a huge fan of his. The competitor, everything that he's done. I mean, listen, I think everybody respects Patrick Mahomes. He's just the way he plays, the way he competes, and that's hard. That's difficult. And you hate. I don't like to use. Oh, he'll be back. But the way we've gotten really good at surgeries and the rehab, and I know the way he takes care of himself. Watching that quarterback series and what he does away from the facility to make sure his body's in the best shape. I think he'll be back, and that team will look a little different. I think you'll see some. That team's going to be different, right? They need to address a few things, but they've been so good for so long that it's kind of hard not to just kind of keep on, hey, let's go back at it, because we're making Super Bowl after Super Bowl year after year. So I think your team will look a little bit different, but I think the quarterback's going to come back just fine.
We also saw Micah Parsons tore his ACL yesterday. My eyes then go to Jordan Love, because before they traded for Micah Parsons, people said, the Packers are good, but they were skeptical if they go make a Super Bowl run. Then they get Mike. Everyone's like, oh, here they go. Packers are going to the Super Bowl. And now you're back to not having Micah because he's going to be out. I'm fascinated to see what Jordan Love's going to do the rest of the season.
Yeah, I'm like you. I thought whenever Green Bay traded for Micah, the first thing that came to my mind was, okay, Jordan Love, all the pressure's on you now. Like they're giving you a Super Bowl defense. You have a lot of these young receivers that can really run. Your tight ends were very good. And you saw this team. Yes, they did lose Kraft earlier in the season. That's a major blow to them. But when Watson came back, I thought he just looked different. That element looked different. And they had a tough loss yesterday. Losing Micah's going to hurt, but there's a ton of good defenders on that football team. But I don't think there's any disappointment in losing to Denver yesterday. I think Denver. Listen, their record shows you that's a good football team, and Sean Payton might be able to coach football. In case you were wondering, but yeah, I still think Green Bay's got a chance. I think the NFC, it's still a little open. I'm a huge fan of the Rams. I think the Rams are a scary football team. Losing Devontae's gonna hurt, but I just there's something about McVay and the way that defense plays and Matthew Stafford. My goodness,
Stafford or Josh Allen, who do you think will win the MVP?
Great question. Listen, it's going to go down to the next couple of weeks. Josh Allen yesterday was ridiculous. Josh, huge fan, love everything he does. I think Stafford going into yesterday, in my opinion, was in the lead, but being down in New England yesterday and the way Josh played, especially the second half, I still think you have a couple of more weeks to decide that.
Yeah, like here's how I would say it. Stafford has the better stats. Stafford probably right. It would be nice to see him get the MVP because then he would also then probably solidify his spot in the Hall of Fame. But I know it doesn't always go this way. And this is nothing against Stafford. I love the guy. But if the award is called the most valuable player, I just don't see how there's a more valuable player in the NFL, this year than Josh Allen. Like it's just him and James Cook. There's really nothing much else on that offense.
Yeah, it's he's special. There's no other way around it. And it just seems like he's getting better and better. And it's like the game's in slow motion. I watched him firsthand, and we had a rough game in Carolina against him. And James Cook really got after us. But just watching Josh and watching the way he plays and orchestrates that team. And yeah, he's fun to watch. He is unbelievably fun to watch and such a gifted player.
Imagine we get those two teams in the Super Bowl, Bills and Rams.
It would be great. It's so wide open. It really truly is wide open this year. I don't think this is a true dominant team. I thought the Rams, because the Panthers played them, I probably have a little more film on the Rams. I haven't watched as much Seattle, which I will. We played them in 2 weeks. But that's another team that defensively, they're really, really good. Run game wise, if that run game gets going a little bit, Seattle's another dangerous team. And those teams in those division, they play each other. They know each other well. It's who gets hot at the right time, who's healthy at the right time. But, yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if that would be the matchup you'd see with the Rams and Buffalo.
When you go to the Seahawks, they have a phenomenal team. Sam Darnold is a good quarterback, but there's always that big game question. And, can you win a Super Bowl with the Sam Darnold? How much when there's that narrative out there, especially with how last year ended, can that really play with the quarterback's head?
Hear you. I think, and I've gotten to know Sam when he was in Carolina for 2 years, loved him, respected him. But I just believe being third overall pick, being in New York and that debacle that was on with the Jets at that time. And I just think he's so scarred. He's been scarred over. I think this is just he's calloused, man. And then he had that 1 year where he goes and he goes to San Fran and he kind of just sits and he watches and learns. And I think another thing, I'm pretty certain Brian Griese was the quarterback coach at that time in San Fran. Being around someone like Griese who had kind of been there, played well over a dozen years, that's something that probably spending many hours with him, learning okay, this is a veteran quarterback. And watching Sam in Minnesota and then watching him now in Seattle, I don't know. I'm a fan of Sam. I'm a believer in Sam. I think if that run game gets going, that's going to make them a much better football team in Seattle offensively because I'm a believer in Sam. I truly am.
Jake Delhomme here with us on the Zach Gelb Show. Get into Drake Maye. He's had an unbelievable season. The Patriots have 11 wins. They were up 21-0 yesterday. Looks like they're going to clinch the AFC East, and he just did not play well in the second half. How do you expect Drake Maye to respond off a loss like that?
Yeah, that could be a turning point for that football team. That could be that football team taking the next step. Listen, he's in year 2, right? Last year was not good for them. Like, that's where you learn. That's where teams grow. Luke Kuechly and I, during the game yesterday in New Orleans, we were talking, and Luke was talking about their Super Bowl year. And he said, listen, we went 7-9 the year prior. We made the playoffs, but we weren't there yet in knowing how to win. He goes, it wasn't until we went to Seattle, who was still dominant in those years, and we beat him. I think Cam hit Greg Olsen down the seam late in the game, and that's when that belief kind of triggered, like, all right, we're one of those teams. And yesterday, when they're watching the film today, I don't think there's any doubt. Today, they're thinking, like, we were up 21-0. We had this team. Look at the mistakes we made. And that could trigger that belief. So that's another dangerous football team. And someone like Vrabel, who's an excellent football coach, that's all he needs, just a little bit more fuel to that fire to get this team for that stretch run.
How about Fernando Mendoza winning the Heisman? I thought it was an unbelievable speech. What he's doing in Indiana is ridiculous. I love a story like that. Kid comes over from Cal. It reminds me a little bit of like the Joe Burrow story where no one's really talking about him before the season and then goes on to have a legendary run.
Yeah, it's great, man. I travel a lot on Saturday, so I do miss some college football, but it's funny. One of the games that I was able to watch the whole third and then fourth quarter was the Penn State game. And that drive with no timeouts, the sack. Okay, well, it's over. Penn State's going to beat him. But just to watch him, and so like, man, this guy's got something. And then continue to watch him and then beating Ohio State and the emotion he plays with. And huge fan of their coach. I don't know him, but his little brother, Frank Signetti, was my quarterback coach in New Orleans in 2000 and 2001. So when I hear him talk and I hear that accent, I go back to those days in New Orleans. But man, what a beautiful speech. Family, team. He probably will be the first quarterback taken or one of the top 5 quarterbacks taken. And I think you would be very proud if he would represent your organization. So, yeah, I'm very proud of that kid and loved his speech. Thought it was great.
The Bengals just look like they quit yesterday. I know Burrow said earlier in the week basically he wasn't happy and he was all down in the dumps. Does it feel inevitable, maybe not this offseason because of the contract, but down the road that Joe Burrow goes elsewhere?
I don't know. I do watch that. Real big fan of Joe. Obviously, his time in Baton Rouge, and one of my dear friends was his quarterback coach at LSU, and just know what he's about. I think Joe. I think just the injury this year and missing all that time, and then last year the injury, then coming back and not making the playoffs, and I think it's just he's real, he's honest, and I think that's why we like him. He could have easily just kind of sugarcoated it and like not said anything, but he gave an honest answer. And I love his press conferences because he truly is not waiting to give you the cliche answer.
Yeah.
He's going to look and he stops and he thinks, and it's real. I think there's something refreshing to that. And I think he's just being honest, but yeah, listen, in this football team, if he's healthy next year and they're healthy and they're a playoff team, things can change. It's super emotional in the NFL because you give everything, and sometimes the body doesn't help, I guess you could say. And he's had a couple of massive injuries, so I appreciate how he answered. But I see him being a Bengal. I think he's an Ohio guy through and through.
Now, I don't know what the heck happened yesterday with the Browns and this play call sheet on the wristband. Was there anything you did? Were there any steps that you took to assure that the right calls were actually there?
Well, listen, I had the wristband when I played in New Orleans with Mike McCarthy. Early on in my career, we did not. With Dan Henne in Carolina, we did have the wristband, and I absolutely loved it because it took time away from the coach-to-quarterback communication system. That wristband, like it's memorized by the end of the week. So when they send it in right away, if there's a problem, you can just signal in, 125, flip it, whatever it may be, and I can get it going. So, but listen. Communication is hard sometimes, right? It's hard. It's loud wherever you play at home, away, whatever it may be. Young quarterbacks, we had a communication issue in the game yesterday, Panthers and Saints, and it was on a crucial play. And It was just a miscommunication that it just wasn't sent in right, brought in right, and that happens during the course of a game sometimes.
I'm also curious about your thoughts on Phillip Rivers. They almost won the game yesterday up against the Seahawks. When it was announced that he was coming back, I was like, oh, this probably has to be a fake tweet or something like that. But it was reality. That was unbelievable yesterday.
No, it was. And I only saw bits and pieces because it was the same time as our game. So I haven't had a chance to watch most of it. Not surprised at all, to be honest. Listen, Phillip, and you've probably seen him in person. This is I'm going to use the word country strong. He's this big country strong, burly guy. But I read
He's been having a few biscuits, by the way, recently. He added a few pounds.
But he's a big man, and the arm is not an issue. And mentally, he's been running that system. I know he and Shane Steichen are very close friends. They were together with the Chargers. But I read an article yesterday, and a lot of his high school kids that he coaches, because his son's a premier prospect, they said he still works out with us. He runs sprints with us at practice. We don't have a ton of quarterbacks like backups. He still throws routes. He does scout team. So the mind was still there, and I understand it's high school. But when you know the system, it's one thing is that he's signing on Monday, and he's trying, okay, let's go with this limited menu. I'm not so sure how limited that menu was because of the familiarity with the system. And he knows, hey, this is what we need to run. And these are the plays that I like. And I think that brings confidence to the football team because he can hop in there. I saw it firsthand with Vinny Testaverde at 44 years of age. When I was in Carolina, I had Tommy John surgery. I tore my UCL, and we signed Vinny. But Vinny came in, and Dan Henning was the offensive coordinator. Vinny played for Dan Henning and Bill Parcells for years. It's the same offense. The first week, Vinny threw for 350. We went to play Arizona, but he was familiar. He knew it. I think that makes a big, big difference. When you know something and you're not calling from this very limited menu, the Rolodex is there. You can use all the plays. And I'm not surprised that Indy played hard, played well yesterday.
I'm sure you give advice to young quarterbacks all the time. Diego Pavia finished second in the Heisman. Is at a club. There's an F Indiana sign after he lost out to Mendoza. He said on Instagram, like, F all the Heisman Trophy voters. What advice would you give to him? As clearly there's some immaturity there.
Well, I mean, listen, and he's young, right? I think everybody learns from some things. He probably wishes, and I think he came out, hey, I probably shouldn't have done that. Listen, you get caught up in the moment. Would you like for him not to do that? Sure. But you know what? That's kind of his persona. I mean, the way he plays and all that, and that's what makes him who he is. For me, I don't want to draw negative attention in that regard. I think you live, you learn, and that's something that he'll learn from.
Yeah, my Heisman ballot had him second, so I take great offense to that, obviously, Jake. My feelings were really hurt by that. No, all kidding aside. Hey, Jake, we really do appreciate the time. Thanks so much for jumping on board with us once again.
Okay, Zach, anytime, man. Have a great day.